Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, welcome. We are going to be talking about Derek Chauvin and what happened to him, which, in my opinion, was an orchestrated hit, possibly carried out by the FBI and BOP. And so we're going to talk about who the individual was that shanked him 22 times, this individual's background and connection to the FBI, and a number of other things. So I've gathered some research that I'm going to present. And so I hope everybody stays with me as I kind of cover all of this until the end, because we're going to talk about some other things as well, how this is connected to other cases and problems that we're having with the Bureau of Prisons generally. All right, so let's go ahead and bring up this article from Miranda Devine. I thought this was really good. This was published in the New York Post on November 26. Railroaded Derek Chauvin's foes will stop at nothing to punish the ex-cop as he's nearly killed in prison. She says, I guess it's no surprise that Derek Chauvin has been stabbed almost to death in prison. The Minneapolis cop convicted of murdering George Floyd in 2020 has been thoroughly scrubbed of his personhood, let alone his rights. That's absolutely true. I think everybody knows by now that he is a political prisoner, and that an injustice occurred. And I think the only people who don't believe that are people who are ideologically predisposed to believe it, just narratives over documented facts at this point. So she says nobody bothered to tell his family or his lawyer that another inmate attacked him Saturday. Now, this article was published November 26, I believe. So this is, happened a few days ago. Despite being the most notorious ex-cop in America, he was not protected from violent prisoners. The fact that he was even in the ill-run federal prison in Tucson, Arizona, 1,638 miles from his family speaks volumes. He could hardly be further from home. Now, why is this important, and why do I want to discuss this? Because have we not talked about the same thing with the Whitmer case? Why are the guys who were not even federally charged, who were only charged in the state case, why are they in federal prison? We were supposed to get an answer to that December 1st. As far as I understand, there's no real answer provided. They just say, oh, overcrowding, or they just make up nonsense, and then nobody validates or verifies it. People just take the BOP's word for it. I don't do that anymore. But these guys have all been sent out of Michigan. They're all very far from their families. And this is the same thing that the families are dealing with. His families are dealing with, and you could call them high-profile political prisoners as well, with documented injustices in their case, right? And ding ding, a documentary coming out, because that's what happened with this case. A documentary, as far as I understand, has come out called Fall of Minneapolis that discusses the FBI and their involvement in this, and the issues with the autopsy report and concealing the cause of death from the medical examiner, which we all know to be what it is, which was a fentanyl overdose. So she continues, Chauvin is more reviled than all of these bad people in these prisons because someone was needed to embody the myth of systemic injustice that fueled the Democrats' 2020 campaign, creating a frightening atmosphere of chaos and lawlessness that helped dislodge Trump from the White House. And then, of course, the Supreme Court, as she notes, after this occurred, there were a lot of people who took advantage of that to do very bad things, which was called mostly peaceful protests and the Summer of Love and all of that. It was a worldwide thing that was happening. Everybody knows this. And so, yes, the Supreme Court they have declined to take this up. She says the corrupt political manipulators who engineered the unrest, cowardly agents of the state who staged the courtroom railroading, would like nothing better for him to be dead, to save them from being exposed. That exposure is surely coming. As an injustice so clear cannot stand in a country that still believes in the rule of law. Liz Collins' stunning documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis, is only the start. The Supreme Court last week refused Chauvin's long-shot request to review his 2021 conviction. His lawyers argued he'd been denied a fair trial because Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill refused to move to a venue outside Minneapolis despite massive pretrial publicity and prejudicial impact of angry mobs outside the courthouse, causing jurors to express fears for their own safety. Now, you could say that the Whitmer case was also very high profile and was kept in Michigan, like the state cases. The quote-unquote victim is literally the judge's boss. It's the governor. And she wasn't a victim. She knew what was going on. Like, the FBI kept her aware of it, her and her team, the entire time. Same with her security detail. Like, they knew. They were in on it. If a courthouse surrounded by barbed wire, National Guardsmen don't send a clear enough message of the ramifications of a not guilty verdict, there was Maxine Waters, who flew into town to rabble-rouse. The Democrat Congresswoman urged people who were doing bad things to get more confrontational if there was acquittal. Stay on the street because we're looking for a guilty verdict, she said. Okay, so we all know about this issue. So let's move on to what is going on now with what occurred and who may be behind it. This is coming from Miriam Hennon on Twitter. She is, I believe, another documentary filmmaker. She says, wonder how inmates get weapons in a medium security prison. What did they stab him with that caused serious injury? When I called the prison, the person who transferred me into oblivion, like that, yeah, there are less than 400 prisoners there. What will they do with the assailant? Throw him in jail. Exactly.
Hello, you reached the Federal Correctional Institution at the Federal Correctional Complex in Tucson, Arizona.
Good luck getting any of these people on the phone.
Operator.
Because I've tried, okay? Try to arrange a visit. Try to get in for visits. Try to get approved.
Is this call in reference to an inmate?
I'm calling to get a status. I'm a journalist on Derek Chauvin.
Okay.
Is there a press release?
That I could transfer you to someone that might be able to help you.
Were you personally aware that there was a stabbing?
I could transfer you to the right person. I can't give you any information.
Okay. Where are you gonna send me?
This is the games they play. They've done this to me too when I've tried to call to get information. They'll just transfer you to lines that just ring. Like, you can't even leave a message. Or it just hangs up. This is what happens. And so, you know, we had the oversight hearing. You guys know I attended that. The BOP oversight hearing in Washington, D.C. Do you think that Director Colleen Peters was asked anything about stuff like this? No, not from the Democrats, not from the Republicans. There's no oversight. There is no accountability. There's no transparency, and neither side cares how people are being treated in there. They're like, oh, what more could we do to help the guards, right? I also like to show pictures like this to try to humanize these people. I think it's really awful when the only thing available is pictures of them in court or going in and out of court and mugshots. No, they're human beings and they should be humanized. Now, moving on, I thought that this was actually a very good point. Now, I am not a fan of, as you guys know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she did recently appear on Tucker's program on X, which I guess used to be Twitter, and she's kind of acknowledging what everybody has known. So we'll just let her speak for herself.
You know, it's very unpopular to talk about it. So
Why?
obviously, Tucker, I'm going to talk about it.
Well, good.
Yeah, I think I do believe this is one of the biggest injustices happening in our country today. I believe it's an attack on him because he's white and he's male.
Obviously.
I believe that it's political and they have to crucify him because he was a police officer. He had a great record. He did nothing wrong, and he is white and male and Christian. So they have to make an example of him.
Okay, so what I would ask is, did she say this at the time, like when it mattered, right? When it wasn't popular to say it, when it wasn't acknowledged by the mainstream, or the more mainstream aspects of, you know, this side of things. You know, what was she saying at the time? Because I guarantee it is not in alignment with what she's saying now. But it is always, of course, good to see people finally acknowledging things. You know, so this is an article from Steve Saylor from VDare discussing this bizarre narrative that we have about this. So people are trying to downplay the fact that the assailant was a longtime, quote unquote, former FBI informant. And they're saying, oh no, this was in support of BLM or something to that effect. And it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense. What does Black Friday, like the day after Thanksgiving, have to do with that? Like, it doesn't make sense. But any case, the stabber is a Slavic Mexican leader of the Mexican Mafia. He says heavy.com is the go-to site for facts about latest in criminal news. They'll just give you basic background, like top 5 things you need to know about this person, sort of like just giving you the basics. This is the guy's name, John Turscak. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I probably am not. Is a former Mexican Mafia gang leader and FBI informant who is accused of shanking former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin 22 times in Tucson, Arizona, in the prison law library. Now, that's also, it's interesting that he was there in the first place, because this guy, according to, I believe it was Viva Fry, and I will put the links in the Rumble, on my Rumble video, because yeah, I will get flagged if I do it on YouTube here, but I think it was Viva Fry talked about this guy had complained before about him being unsafe in the federal prison as a known federal informant. But his sentence was almost done. Like, he was going to be getting out in a few years, so it just doesn't make sense why he would do this. This story seems bizarre, and I would suggest it's not true. I don't think he just did this in support of BLM. I believe that he was basically coerced into doing it by the FBI, possibly in coordination with the Bureau of Prisons. Of course, this is just my speculation. We don't know this to be a fact yet, but come on. If they're not planning it, they're creating the conditions for it to happen, and they're preventing these people from being protected, people they know to be high-profile political prisoners. They're going to put them purposely in a place where they're going to be in danger. That's what they're doing, if not actually orchestrating it themselves. But I think the timing of it was very interesting. So here's how he's described. He is described in the Federal Bureau of Prisons database as a 52-year-old white male with a release date of 2026. That's just 3 years away. So he was almost out, right? So this is the narrative. John Turscak, who went by the gang name Stranger, chose Black Friday because of the BLM movement and Mexican Mafia's Black Hand symbol, court documents say. He saw an opportunity to assault DC in the law library on Friday, November 24, 2023, day after Thanksgiving, commonly known as Black Friday, which again is just like a shopping thing. People they get up early to get so-called discounts on consumer products. Like, I don't see the connection of the date. Like, I don't understand it. But I think it should be noted that he was stabbed 22 times, and he had been, I think he has 22 years in prison is his sentence. So the number 22, like, that could have symbolism that actually makes sense, but this does not. Turscak stated his attack on Black Friday was, quote, symbolic with the BLM movement and Black Hand symbol associated with Mexican Mafia criminal organizations. John Turscak was described as a high-level gang member who was in a war with another Mexican mafia leader in California. John once worked as an FBI informant, but the agency dropped him because he was accused of plotting murders while on the government's payroll. In the 2001 article in the Times adds, Turscak was a paid informant for the FBI. He began cooperating with the government all the way back in April of 1997, was subsequently dropped when FBI agents learned he had plotted to yeet Martinez, another mafia capo, and his associates while on the government's payroll. Turscak had ordered a yeeting attempt of Martinez in 97, and Martinez was, quote, wounded in the arm, and his fiancée narrowly missed being shot, the Times reported. An article in the LA Times also in 2001 said Turscak became an informant in 97, quote, in an investigation that resulted in the indictment of more than 40 alleged Mexican mafia members and associates. The district court found, however, that although the government was aware Turscak was talking about a conspiracy to yeet Martinez, Turscak was cooperating with the investigation. So there was no reason to believe he actually intended to carry it out, they claim. Oh, okay. Turscak once told a judge he expected a lighter sentence because he had an agreement with FBI agents. In November 2001, the Fresno Bee reported Turscak received a 30-year prison term, calling him an FBI informant who was a former member of the Mexican Mafia. He was sent to prison for racketeering and conspiracy to yeet a rival in the gang. Turscak expressed dismay after pleading guilty because he thought he had an agreement with FBI agents that would have brought him a lighter sentence. Quote, I didn't commit those crimes for kicks. I did them because I had to if I wanted to stay alive and because that's what the FBI wanted. Okay, so let me guess. His dad wasn't around much. How common are Croatians in the Mexican Mafia? I don't know, but a previous Croatian-American leader of the Mexican Mafia was Joe Pegleg Morgan from Wikipedia, an American gangster who became the first non-Hispanic member of the Mexican Mafia. He received nickname Pegleg because of his prosthetic leg. He was youngest of 4 siblings to Croatian immigrants, a truck driver. Shortly after his father became a U.S. citizen, Anglicanizing the family name to Morgan due to anti-Slavic sentiment. Blah, blah, blah. He grew up in a primarily Mexican and Croatian neighborhood in San Pedro. Later was raised by his mother in a Mexican neighborhood and became fluent in Spanish. Very interesting. Very weird, to say the least. Okay, now, I am not a fan of Gorka, and I want to share the stupidity of this post. Gorka says, and he thinks that he is superior to everybody. Seriously, guys? Chauvin's attacker was an FBI informant. What are you positing exactly? And how many scumbags do you think the FBI pays to be CIs, who then go to jail anyway? 16 million illegals in 3 years, 700 plus years of charges against Trump, and this is what you're posting. Get a grip. Get perspective. So he is saying, like, oh, the fact that this guy was an FBI informant for so many years and was almost gonna be released seemingly does this to no benefit to himself, and you're not allowed to even speculate that potentially there was some kind of orchestrated thing going on here. That's just ridiculous. He's such a clown. Yeah, found LA Times article from 2001 about Chauvin's attacker, aka the Raven. Multiple attempts to off a rival kingpin in Mexican Mafia / La M and seize control of the gang. We're y'all already aware he's an FBI informant too. He was played, I guess, by this guy in a movie. So I don't even know like what's happening. This is a thread from Richard Booth on X. If the other inmates did not know about this before, they definitely know now, and he is screwed. Turscak was an informant in 97, yes, providing information about his gang, as well as recordings of conversations between him, members, and associates. Quote, The investigation resulted in 40 indictments. Halfway through, Turscak was dropped as an informant because he was dealing drugs, authorizing assaults, and extorting money. Yeah, that sounds like the type of people that the FBI works with, does it not? They were probably doing it on... He was probably doing this stuff literally on their behalf. He only had 3 years left on his sentence. Turscak could now see 60 years added to his sentence. The guy might have wanted to stay there, and that is a good point, and it's fair to bring up. Once you are a felon and have been locked away in there for a long time, your chances of succeeding in this world are very low. Upon getting out, he'd have a very hard time paying rent and buying food. Now he's guaranteed to stay there for a long time. However, with news that his snitching caused 40 indictments, that could seal his fate. That is a very good point as well, that if these people, the other inmates, weren't aware that this guy was an informant, they are now. I would suggest they were, though, because he himself had been apparently complaining about that. So it appears they did know, and that's why he was saying he wasn't safe in there. And perhaps he did this so they would put him in solitary confinement to separate him from the other prisoners. Maybe. I don't know. We don't know. But this is also a very good point here. This is from Gaina Fauci on X. A bombshell report gets dropped about the FBI meeting with Floyd's medical examiner and altering the autopsy report. Then, just 2 days later, a longtime FBI informant shanks Chauvin 22 times in jail. Is that accurate? And yes, that is accurate. That did, in fact, happen. Now, continuing, an informant does this. The police officer accused of doing this, and the media is silent. This comes after Chauvin filed an appeal with evidence that he did not cause Floyd's death. Is it possible they'd rather he be dead than deal with what could happen if he was released? And I think that that is a really good point to make. Yes, this is where it gets interesting. Before that, he worked against the Mexican Mafia. When being sentenced, he admitted that he carried out crimes while working undercover as an informant, saying, you do what you have to do. And he told the agents that, and they just told... So he said, I didn't do those crimes for kicks. I did them because I had to if I wanted to stay alive. I told the FBI agents that, and they told him to just do what you have to do. He says, wild. I think that's also... Yes, so same thing with Whitey Bulger, right? Did they not tell him the same thing? And was he not doing the same thing? Jesse Waters did a segment talking about this. He had on Liz Collins, the journalist who did the documentary Fall of Minneapolis. He says, he brings her on to discuss this, and because of copyright, I'm not going to play the full thing, but I will play just a couple seconds here of it, and I'll include the link.
Shocking new details in the attempted murder of America's most high-profile inmate. Last Friday, Derek Chauvin was shivved 22 times in the library by another inmate. And now we know who the other inmate was. His name is John Turscak. He's 52, and he's already served 27 years of his 30-year sentence. And with 3 years left until freedom, apparently decided, I'm going to murder somebody.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like people are saying, well, it could just be that he was scared, he wouldn't be able to survive on the outside, so maybe he just wanted to stay there. And I think that you could make that argument, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't really, I don't see why he specifically would feel solidarity with the BLM movement as a Slavic immigrant. I just don't see how that even makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And it's really disturbing that the way that this is being reported in the mainstream media is they're making it sound like that's what this is about. They're not mentioning in the mainstream media headlines, FBI informant does this. They're saying, oh, inmate, does this in solidarity with BLM. And it's like, no, I don't think that's the takeaway here, okay? At all.
Turscak is also a member of the Mexican Mafia. And are you ready? An FBI informant.
Of course.
The complaint says Turscak at first denied wanting to kill Chauvin. And then the complaint says the Mexican Mafia guy waived his Miranda rights when the FBI agent showed up to interview him, first of all.
That's the other thing. So the FBI, immediately after this, right before it happens, this report comes out showing that the FBI met with the medical examiner to alter the autopsy report. That just comes out. This happens. Right after it happens, here are the FBI agents to interview their former informant who did this. Come on, guys. Like, are we really expected to believe that there's no connection there?
Why is the FBI conducting the interview?
Right.
The FBI only shows up to prison murders as if someone's ordered a hit or if the perp or the victim was still informing, or all of the above.
Oh, yeah. Is it starting to make sense now, guys? Like, really? And this is why I have, like, serious concerns about the Whitmer guys being where they're at, in the places they're at, in around the people that they're around. And I fear for their safety, especially when their communications have been severely limited and our ability to find out what's going on and to be informed is being very limited.
And why does a guy who knows the criminal justice system waive his Miranda rights? And wait until you hear what the FBI says he confessed to. It's just too perfect. The FBI claims that the Mexican Mafia guy wanted to murder Chauvin on Black Friday to symbolically avenge Black Lives Matter. So let me get this straight. The Mexican Mafia member who poisoned blacks his whole career with drugs and who was incarcerated during the Black Lives Matter movement is a social justice warrior.
Like, come on. Nobody's buying this story, guys. It's ridiculous. Fox News isn't even buying the story, which is saying a lot. Yeah, the most interesting part of this is he's immediately questioned by the FBI after this. There are no coincidences. That is Katie Davis Court saying that in response to the news coming out of who this, that he was an informant. And she's saying, yeah, and then they go and interview him right away. Chauvin was attacked by a former quote-unquote FBI informant just also 8 days after the release of Liz Collins' documentary linking the FBI to his case, trial, and sentencing. Think about that. Hello? You think they want more documentaries coming out disclosing their corruption in high-profile political cases like this, like the Whitmer case? No, they most likely surveilled her just like they do me. And yeah, so this, come on, guys, it's ridiculous. We got one more article on that. This is coming from Information Liberation, Chris Menahan, just reiterating the same thing. And here you can actually read what he's being charged with, and it's just kind of reading to this is a little bit strange how they write this stuff up on their own complaints and like the wording here. You'll see, just read it yourself. But yes, he was serving 30 years, you know, and he was almost out. It just makes no sense, does it? Wow. Yeah, and it is really important, I think, to point out that there was Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Everyone knows about him. He is a clown. They were all corrupt. Yes. It was a rigged show trial. That is also true. And it says Merrick Garland reportedly had a secret plan to arrest him in court if he was found not guilty. So it was always, they decided the outcome and then they just fit the pieces in to make it look like he's having a fair trial. But they did the same thing in the Whitmer case. Same thing. They just give it the appearance of making it look like it was an actual trial when in fact it wasn't, and they had already created the conditions to get the outcome they wanted. And it's frustrating. And the appeals process is difficult also. And in that, they don't want these guys appealing. They don't want their appeals to go through. It's why they're, I don't know, maybe working with the Bureau of Prisons to make sure these guys aren't getting their legal mail or delaying their mail, making it impossible for them to meet their deadlines to get it out. Under the contingency arrest plan, a Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office would have charged him by criminal complaint, a quicker alternative for federal charge that doesn't require a grand jury. So they could arrest him immediately and then ask a grand jury for an indictment. According to sources who were not authorized to speak publicly, the Star Tribune reported back in April of 2021. He says, here's what I wrote June 25th, 2021, after he was sentenced to 22 and a half years. If he isn't killed in prison by racist jail guards like those torturing the J6 prisoners or another prisoner, perhaps with a speedy enough show trial, Garland will be able to do it himself. Chauvin was nearly killed 2 years later in federal prison under Garland's watch. Last week, the quote-unquote conservative Supreme Court rejected his appeal, abandoning him for political expediency, just the same as the GOP. 100%. He never should have been found guilty, as Floyd's death was almost certainly caused by a fentanyl overdose, combined with a host of extensive, severe, pre-existing heart conditions. Hennepin County Medical Examiner Office autopsy found Floyd was high on fentanyl, meth, and was sick with COVID. So we're talking about a slew of things here, right? Okay, so they could have at least protected him while he's in there. And I think he makes a good point that he needs to be granted a pardon. In the prison itself, the guards and Garland need to be placed under criminal investigation for letting this happen on their watch. But guys, it's not just this. Hello, Jeffrey Epstein. No investigation into the BOP after that. Nothing. No transparency. Nothing. This is just what happens, and you're expected to just deal with it. Now, I want to remind you guys that you can support the documentary for my documentary for the Whitmer case. You know, we had the FBI saying things that they don't really want the general public to know about what they did in this case. You can go to knkfilm.com/donate to donate to the documentary. You can also just go to givesendgo.com/radixverum. There is also a GiveSendGo set up by Gabby. This is Adam Fox's sister, for Adam to get him some items he needs while he is in Florence Supermax for Christmas. So they don't get coats, winter blankets. He doesn't have the proper shoes he needs. It's very expensive, and yes, the families, the cost on all this is put off onto the families, which is very difficult. So if you can contribute to the documentary, to this, I highly appreciate it. I'm so grateful. And finally, closing off, I want to say one more thing, which is that we finally hit 13,000 subscribers. I don't even know what to say about that. I am so pleased. I'm so surprised. I really felt like I was going to be stuck at 12K forever. It's been almost a year like that, I think. And I just felt like they were suppressing the channel so much that we'll never cross that line. But we have. I can't believe there's 13,000 people out there listening who care that much about what I have to say. So thank you for that. That is awesome. And your support means a lot. Anyways, this is my thoughts on this story. I'm interested to know what you guys think of this. Do you think that this it happened in coordination with the FBI and the Bureau of Prisons, like I happen to believe? Or do you think that it could have been, for another reason? All right, have a good day.